My father would say, "Throw on the stakes, Eileen. The prodigal son is home." What a message. When a man would come up the aisle, the priest would say, "Remember, man, that you are dust, and unto dust you shall return." And if it's a woman, to be inclusive, say, "Remember, woman, you are dust, and unto dust you shall return." Well, after an hour of repeating the same, but the story is, the guy walked up the aisle and the priest said, "Remember, man, that you are woman." Time to take a break. I have to say, I went to Notre Dame. There's an old joke that says,
It's obligatory.
How can you tell if somebody's from Notre Dame? And the answer is, you don't have to tell. Sooner or later, they're going to tell.
They're going to bring it up.
Sad, but.
Tito, I have a very important manhood question for you. Are you ready for this? Test your manhood.
I think I am. Yeah.
So, what animals do you think you could beat up? If you had no weapons and you had to just take down an animal, because this was a poll that was given, and I'm amazed by the answers. Do you think you could take down a large dog with your bare hands?
A large dog, maybe, but I don't want to try. I'll go for a bunny.
What about a goose? You think you could take down a goose?
A goose. Geese they're horrible, savage creatures. I feel like I could take one down, but it would hurt a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so as well. 17% of males in the United States are unhinged because they think they can take down a chimpanzee with their bare hands.
No, they can't.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't. Someone said a deer one time, and I was like, no, not even that.
No, they're so fast and they're so strong. And what are you going to do with it when you catch it? No, it's going to kick you.
Yeah.
8% think that they can take down a gorilla.
No.
And 6% think a grizzly bear. Like, what is wrong with people?
I mean, we can't watch them try because they will die. But
yeah.
But I'd like to see something. I'd like to see them try something smaller and then have a rude awakening.
I mean, just like a house cat. Like, see if you can even catch one, let alone kill it.
True.
It's going to scratch you. You're going to say, "Ow!" You're going to run away, and then maybe a dose of humility.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Yeah. No.
Yes. So, no segue whatsoever to who we're talking about today. I don't believe he's killed any animals. I hope not, but that might be our first question. Talking with a friar who's lived an extremely interesting life from here, there, and everywhere, all around the Chicagoland area. He's worked with Latinos. He sings. He's a great preacher. I've heard him preach many times. We're happy to welcome to the show Father Ed Shea. Ed, welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Ed, do you think that you could beat up an animal? Like, if you survival mode, could you take down a wolf?
Oh God, no. I do think, though. I have to tell you, I've never been an animal lover. We never had pets in my house.
Well, that's helpful.
So yeah. So I don't want to beat him up, and I don't want to talk to him. So I'm all about people. I'm from a big family, and I love people, and I'm kind of sticking with that. Although I have been converted, I have to tell you the truth. A few animals have touched my life over the years, like Blackie, this one dog that I met when Obama got elected. There was a Mexican family that had this dog, or they decided they were going to get a dog. And I said, "Well, this is ridiculous. Your house is so small. You have, no rooms. How can you get a dog?" Well, they didn't listen to my good advice, and they got this dog. And I'll tell you a quick story. They ever about maybe a month into his existence in their house. It's a family that I still visit every Sunday night. The dog got sick, went under the bed, was dying, and they coaxed it out, and nobody knew what was wrong. They took it to the vet. The owner, the father in the family, is a quadriplegic. He was shot tragically in Chicago South Side. Yeah, it was terrible. He went out to work early in the morning on a Tuesday, and there was a guy there with a gun. He said, "Give me your money." The guy gave him his money. "Give me your cell phone." He gave him his cell phone. He said, "You want to take my van?" And the guy said, "No, now we're going up to your apartment." And he's like, "No, not my kids." He didn't speak English, but he was saying, "No, I have a wife." And he said, "Oh, you have a wife and kids? Well, they shot my daughter." Boom, he shoots him. And the bullet entered behind his right ear, and it lodged in his third vertebrae. He's a 3C incomplete. So, guy, since October 16, 2006, he's been in a wheelchair.
Wow.
So I became friends with the family in the process of it used to be ministry. Now it's just friendship, deep and powerful friendship. And anyway, they got this dumb dog, and I said, they coaxed the dog out. Now this time the guy is not working. His wife's not working. They have nothing. They're living off of charity, and they find out that it's going to cost $200 to fix the dog. So I came up with the $200. And I gave it to him.
You do have a heart
from
for
that
animals.
day. I had a heart for animals. It was a conversion. But I'll tell you, from that day till now, every time I go to the house, including last night, this now really old dog, it's from 2006, he's like, "Arr, arr, arr," Father Ed's here, Father Ed's here. Padre Lalo, they call me. Padre Lalo is my nickname.
Padre Lalo.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad that you were converted by a dog. If you would have said that you hated animals and then a cat converted you, I think we'd have to end the interview right now.
Yeah. We're both dog people here.
Oh, good.
And it would be a dog that would help you, but help a family that's in tragedy, a family that's struggling, to just bring some wholesomeness, to bring some comfort, to bring some companionship, which is wonderful, which is why it's such a weird transition from which animal would you kill to how much we love dogs. But we're men of peace here. It's weird to hear Franciscans talk about this. But you're right. In talking with you and knowing you over the years, it's all about relationship with you. And so it's great that you kind of launched into this. That I think one of the great things about Friars is that we are in the mess of people's lives, the good, the bad, the ugly. And, that's just an off-the-cuff story of someone you've known. I mean, how do you keep in touch with people over the years of the amount of people that you must be in touch with or in contact with, you've met? What's it like being in a relationship with them?
Here's my life. Juntos como hermanos, miembros de una iglesia, vamos caminando al encuentro del Señor. Here's what it means. Together as brothers and sisters, members of one church, we're walking. We're on our way to the kingdom. We're not where we used to be, thank God, but we're not yet where we want to be. And all along the way, there's all kinds of people. I love our Pope Francis, who invites us into encounter. My life is full of encounters. I love people. I love relationships. I love figuring out how do people tick. What's going on with you? How do you live your life? And for the most part, it's a blessing. And there's some challenges to it too, So that's my life.
Well, explain your wall. Your wall behind you has got me so fascinated.
Isn't it great? Yeah. Well, it really comes from the time of COVID when I was in my house, in my room at St. Peter's, where I lived downtown for many years. And I had a few pictures on the wall behind me. And then I noticed that there's a wall behind me. So I started taking pictures. You know how people give you pictures. Actually, I did this even before COVID. And I don't know, what do you do with these pictures, right? So instead of throwing them away, I just started taping them onto the wall. So everywhere I've lived, even since my early priesthood, I just take Christmas cards and, especially pictures, families, and I just start taping them up on the wall. And it just fills the wall behind me. And it's all about these people, Let me share something with you, the metaphor for my life. I had this spiritual director for about 25 years, really great. He was a Lutheran pastor, and he was a wonderful, wonderful spiritual director. And every time we met, different images would come up. So the image that came up one time was, my life is like a house, and it's actually my mother's house. So when you walk in the front door, there's the living room, there's my immediate family. I have 6 sisters and 1 brother, mom and dad, a lot of other relatives.
Big family.
My grandma lived there, And people from big families, we love being from big families.
Sure.
Yeah.
We complain about it, and it's dysfunctional, and it's Irish and
you wouldn't have it
Italian.
any other way.
Right.
That's right. Exactly. I love it. I love my family. But then go out into the dining room, and there's all my cousins. I have 50 cousins and aunts and uncles. And then all these rooms, basement rooms, first floor rooms, second floor rooms, there are all these rooms of people, kids I went to grade school with. I still see a guy that I went to kindergarten with on 2 or 3 times, twice a week. We work out together. Kindergarten, grade school, high school, and college. I went to Notre Dame. Yeah, I have to say I went to Notre Dame. There's an old joke that says
It's obligatory.
How can you tell if you're if somebody's from Notre Dame? And the answer is You don't have to tell. Sooner or later, they're going to tell you.
They're going to bring it up.
Sad but true.
There's a few, I think, colleges that this applies to. Cornell would be another one.
So all these rooms, these places, people, relationships, and it's so wonderful. The high school friends, grade school friends, all these parishes that I've worked at. And so I was stationed at 3 different places as a pastor and 1 other place as an associate. So I've actually had an assignment there. But then a lot of my time in the last, 38 years of priesthood has been to be in all kinds of different places, all kinds of different relationships and helping out. Like I do a lot of supply work. I do a lot of parish missions and retreats. And I don't know, I just keep meeting people along the way.
I think it's wonderful. I mean, you could collect books, you could collect figurines, you could, fill your house with whatever it might be, but you've got people. And I think that's so indicative of our life as Franciscans. Yeah,
I agree. I think, Father Chuck Faso was a pastor of St. Peter's, and he was really an influence in my life. Because of him, I think I became a Franciscan. But he really talked a lot about how, we're right in the middle of things. Downtown St. Peter, downtown Chicago is like downtown New York, like downtown Boston. You just get this whole mix of people coming through, The biggest day of the year at St. Peter's, Ash Wednesday. It's just so great. People coming in from all over the city, and Catholics and Protestants and Muslims and Jews. It doesn't matter. Everybody comes. Sometimes the line outside on Madison Street extends all the way to LaSalle and all the way to Clark. And it's just the biggest day for St. Peter's. And what I started doing several years ago is, there's a story about that. Instead of when a man would come up the aisle, the priest would say, "Remember, man, that you are dust, and unto dust you shall return." And if it's a woman, to be inclusive, say, "Remember, woman, you are dust, and unto dust you shall return." Well, after an hour of repeating the same thing, the story goes, it's probably apocryphal, but the story is the guy walked up the aisle and the priest said, "Remember, man, that you are woman." Okay, time to take a break.
Yeah.
But what I started doing a couple years ago was asking people their name. I mean, you got like 5 seconds, So I'd say, "What's your name?" "Julie." "Julie, remember, you are dust, and unto dust you shall return." It's baptismal, right? I mean, relationships in my life are all about baptism, being called by name. I love that. The first question we ask when somebody gets baptized is not, what do you believe? Not, are you willing to raise this child in the practice of the faith? Not, are you a registered member of the parish? Not, would you like to buy a raffle ticket? The first thing we ask people is, what name have you given to this child? It's beautiful, isn't it? I mean,
sure, it's a sense of identity. It's a sense of leadership. I mean, I often ask them in the context of that, so what name have you given your child? And I say, did the child drive himself or herself to church today? Did they get themselves dressed today? And they laugh, of course not. I said, you have taken this responsibility on. You have taken your faith. You've given this to this child, and you must continue to do this. You have such a responsibility. I know parents, certainly of teenagers, get a little frustrated with their teens, but I think even the teenagers, they listen, they look up to their parents. There's something there that has a power over them in a way that I don't. There's a witness to being a parent. And I think somewhat to what you're saying here is the relationship is, once you form a bond with someone, you're able to have difficult conversations. You just going up on the street as the priest and saying, "Hey, you should be doing this," no one's going to listen to you. But I'm sure over the years, because you've formed those deep bonds with people, you're able to have the hard conversations, and they're much more willing to listen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it has to do with that kind of authentic connection with somebody. If I'm talking to you, if I'm in a relationship with you, that would be a reason to keep coming back. I don't think the church is going to survive if it's all about following rules and regulations. I mean, the truth is a lot of people don't go to church. A lot of my friends don't go to church. Half my family's not going to church. None of my nephews and nieces, well, maybe one. I have 2. I have a sister who lives in Spain, and she has 2 sons. And one of those 2 is involved with a school that's Opus Dei, and they go to church all the time, and the kids are making their first communion. And the other one, too, is a little involved in church. But so many of my nephews and nieces, when I grew up, everybody was obligated. The motivation for going to church was, if you don't go, it's a mortal sin. Well, thank God that's no longer
changed.
true. Well, it's
No, that's
right.
still
it's,
true.
I know, but we don't. Nobody. I don't know. I don't know anybody who preaches that. I hope they don't. But the question is, what would draw people in? Let's get people to come to church because they want to be there. You know, it's like being.
Yeah, it's
I'm
about a
member
relationship with a person, not an idea.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think to what you're talking about is so true that Karl Rahner said it so many years ago that in the future people will either be mystics or they won't be Christians at all. Right? You have to have that profound
nice.
relationship, that profound experience. Because as you said, many, many years ago, people went to church, yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean they wanted to go to church. It's because there were so many social pressures to go to church. It's because that was the fun place to be. Because if you didn't go, someone was going to rat you out. That doesn't exist. Maybe in the South it still exists a little bit, but I think what we're seeing is you're either going to go because you really have a profound experience or not. So we better help people get profound experiences.
Right. I totally agree with that. I mean, that's my life is all about celebrating sacraments. I love to celebrate sacraments, and it's because of that business of relationship. You know, I'm that priest, and I know it drives some people crazy, but I love to be there at the baptism, be there at the first communion, be there at Grandpa's funeral, be there at the wedding, be there because some crazy uncle from Ohio just came into town. Hey, let's call Father Ed. Vamos a llamar al Padre Lalo. Vamos a tener una fiesta. Llama al padre que canta con los mariachis. You know, that happens to me, and I love it. And it's all about that. You know, I'm in AA. I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous since 1986, and you know, it's a huge part of my life. I go to a meeting almost every single day. Well, really every day I go to a meeting, and it's part of my spirituality. I have, you know, my morning routine is I get up really early at 5. I spend an hour and a half kind of in prayer, really wonderful kind of talking to God, but no other activities. And at 6:30 I go to a meeting, and there's all these people, and we know each other. You know, it's not virtual anymore. It's all. By the way, all my meetings are on Zoom. I still go once in a while to an in-person meeting, but I'm loving this Zoom business. You know, whoever heard of it before the pandemic? But man, I remember when we had that in 2018. We had a meeting of all the friars in the country, and we all met on the same day, and it was on Zoom. And everybody's like, what the hell is Zoom? You know, but now I'm telling you, man, I have an account and I use it at least every day. But a lot of my
think about what we're doing
people.
here.
Yeah.
You're in,
and what
you're
you're
in
describing.
Indiana.
Yep. What you're describing, you know, makes me think of something that Dominic Monti said in our previous interview, that something that sets us apart is that we are, in the Franciscan order of lesser brothers. That identity in ourselves is tied to our relationship, right? We're brothers to each other, and we're called to be brothers throughout the world. We're not order of preachers. We're not the Society of Jesus. Order of lesser brothers, and it, you know, that's really tied into how you're living out your vocation. You know, the sense of fraternity, brotherhood to everyone that you encounter.
Yeah. And I think the other piece that is so connected with Pope Francis is the humanness of it all, like being broken, being incomplete. Yeah. You know, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm still an alcoholic, and I say it every single day of the week. And I remember a friend of mine years ago. He said, I talked to my sponsor when I first got here, and I asked him, how long do I have to go to these damn meetings? And he said, until you want to go. And that's happened to me in AA and in the church. And I think it's what I want to say to people that when I meet them along the way, you know, come to church not because it's an obligation, not because it's a mortal sin if you don't go, but come because there's something here. And you're right, Casey. I think we as church ministers, we need to figure out how to be with each other on this journey and walk with each other.
Well, I think what you're saying is exactly it. We need more stories of redemption.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think we live in this world semi-Pelagiast. I think we think that we can save ourselves. You know, the ancient heresy of Pelagian. You know, I think we think that, oh, I'm fine on my own. I don't need anything. But the reality is we've hit rock bottom in so many ways that we don't even see. It's the alcoholics that are willing to admit it. But everyone is in that boat. Everyone is a sinner. Everyone is weak. And I think stories like your own, where you can say, yeah, I recognize this defect in myself, but I don't have to live this way the rest of my existence. I have a Lord. I have a Savior. I have someone who can lift me up and live a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone. I've gone and experienced some, open AA or NA meetings, and I don't struggle with addiction. I was there accompanying brothers who did, or people who did, but what I have found is just an openness on the part of all the people there. There's all of a sudden a lack of fear of, oh my gosh, if I say this thing, if I confess this thing publicly that I've been struggling with, people will judge me. No one there is going to judge you. No. It's a profoundly welcoming place, and everyone there understands we all have our struggles. In the early days of the church, confession was public, and they thought used to terrify me. And then I experienced it in one of those open meetings. I was like, oh no, there's something deeply liberating about everyone just being open and admitting, no, we all struggle, and no one here is going to judge you. Now, I still think there's a beauty and importance to
what Tito's getting
private.
To is he wants to bring back the chapter of faults.
No.
He wants
Let's
to
do
have
it.
all the brothers get together and everyone publicly confess. And if you forget something, a brother would say, well, Brother Ed, I saw you do this.
Not that.
People often ask me, why did you become a Franciscan? I'm going to tell you why. When I was a kid, I was a Catholic. In my little world in Chicago, I don't know if it was true in other parts of the country, there were two kinds of people, Catholics and publics. Everybody I knew went to the Catholic school. Everybody was, and even the Catholic kids who went to the public school were a little suspect. Again, thank God that has changed.
Man.
It's completely changed.
Hurt by that.
Thank
Wow.
God. No, sorry, no offense. But I was an altar boy and loved it, and when I was a little kid, I thought, man, I could be a priest. And not because it was so holy, but because priests get to help people. The people need a priest. In my little world, somebody was tired or broken or sick, or they'd say, hey, call the priest. The priest wasn't a psychologist. The priest didn't know, just call call the priest kind of thing. And so I thought, I'd like to help people in that way. And tell you the truth, brothers, that's still going on in my life. It's that same call is there. But here's what happened. I moved into high school. I met a girl. I fell in love. And man, I thought, well, shoot, I can't be a priest.
Maybe not.
Well, then she dumped me. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe I could be a priest. And that pattern repeated itself more over and over again in my life, and all these different relationships and people. And I remember my dad saying once, I've never, I can always look every girl I've ever dated in the eye. I don't know how many girls my dad dated, but I have the same experience. Like, I have no embarrassment about my relationships. I love people, and I've made tons of mistakes and hurt people along the way, but there's always that energy of mercy and forgiveness. And so
I think it's great you're bringing this up, because I want to make a point here, and hopefully it applies to you. But it sounds like what you're saying is that you wanted to date a girl, but then you couldn't, so then you became a priest. And I think that's the way sometimes people look at the church, is like, oh, it's a plan B. But what I'm really hearing from your life is that your life has always been about relationship, and that your priesthood is about love. It's not running away from love, but it's calling you into love more.
Yes, absolutely. But it's human, right? So I I finished high school and I went to Notre Dame. Have I told you that I went to Notre Dame? I went to Notre Dame.
What is this Notre Dame you speak of? Our Lady?
Is that the
I
one in
remember
France?
one time I went to a thing. Yeah, exactly. I went to an international Franciscan gathering, and I said to these guys from, I forget where they were from, somewhere in Europe, or no, from South America. I said, I went to Notre Dame, and they're like, Notre Dame in France? I'm like,
the cathedral?
Oh my God, no! What the hell? Are you kidding me?
The football place, obviously.
Notre Dame.
Old Dome. Touchdown Jesus.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I'll take the bait. So you've brought it up twice.
Right.
Tell me something about Notre Dame that you want everyone to know. What do you love about it?
I don't know. It's all about relationships. Here we go again. I have tons of stories. Well, let me share one. My mother and father, were really wonderful Catholic people, and they raised this bunch of kids, and they loved their kids. They followed their kids. They just showed up for everything, right? So I started playing the trumpet when I was in 4th grade. And I could play taps. I remember I played taps at my dad's friend's wedding. It was kind of weird. It was a payback for
How old were
something
you?
else. I was 10. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
It was weird.
It's acceptable.
It was so weird.
If you were
Yeah.
17, it'd be a little different.
Little tie with the glasses. Bah, bah, bah. So fun. And then I went to high school at Fenwick, my high school in Fenwick. Our band was so small, we couldn't even form an F, for Fenwick. We couldn't, it was too small.
Oh my gosh.
So I got accepted into Notre Dame, and I joined the band, and it was just like a whole world of openness, like all these people from all over the country, and I'm playing trumpet in the band, and then it was a big band. Well, now it's twice the size it was when I was there, but it's a huge deal to be in the band, And I remember first home game. Thank you. First home game, 1974. We're starting to march through the campus, and there's people all over the place, and I'm so excited. I'm bam, 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 bam. And, it's so great. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this woman running after the band, hopping over a fence, knocking people over with the elbows. And I said, oh my God, it's my mother.
Oh, moms.
Wow.
I'm like,
she's so proud of her little boy.
Are you kidding me? Oh my God. But that's been my life, when I would come home from school, all of us, all of us in the family would get home from school. You always go in the back door, always arrive around dinner time. My father would say, throw on the steaks, Eileen. The prodigal son is home. What a message. Or he'd get up. This is another thing he would do. He'd get up from the table, and when somebody was late, because we were supposed to be home at 6:00, so from 6 to 7 we had dinner every night, and he'd hop up. As one of my sisters was late, he'd hop up and grab the phone. No cell phones, right? And he'd say, "Yes, officer, thank you. She's here now. We're okay." And the kid would be like, "Wow, I tell you what, that is my image of God. So human, so real, so authentic. And I got to tell you, when I graduated, I was still in college, I guess, when the vocation director, I started talking to vocation directors, and I started meeting seminarians. And then I had my first vocation crisis. Because this
I like
is
that
my
you say
life.
first.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because it is more than one.
Always.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. I'll never forget it. I was 20, maybe 21. And I kept meeting all these seminarians, and they were perfect. I mean, even the Franciscan ones, they were just.
That's what I thought when I met Tito.
Stuff about. There you go.
Yeah, right.
They knew everything about the liturgical language and about church history, and I didn't know anything. I was just a beer drinker from Notre Dame, and didn't even know that much about Notre Dame football. I'm all about it. So I'm in this place. I'm a young man. I have doubts and wonderings and insecurities, and I meet all these perfect guys, and I'm thinking, I don't know. I think maybe God wants me to be a priest, but I don't know if I want to be like those guys, And it was It was a real crisis, and because the idea, I think every little Catholic kid thinks about it, like it'd be an astronaut or a priest, like that, and then you get real, So, but this idea of being a priest never left me, and I thought, okay. And then I met these guys, and then the vocation director for the Sacred Heart Province did me a huge favor. He took me to a play. It was downtown Chicago, and it was a play about St. Francis. And I think it was called The Irresistible Fool. And there's this guy on the stage who is completely human. Like, he's not got it all together. He doesn't know all the answers. He's not like those seminarians. And at one point, the guy was on the stage. He was kind of struggling. He was trying to pray, but you could tell he just really wasn't having a good experience of it. So he takes off all of his clothes, like this symbol of vulnerability, nakedness, and he raises his hands to the ceiling and he screams, "I can't hear you!"
Wow.
And I was in the audience, and I thought, okay, I could join that group.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I'm going for.
That's right.
That's
right.
The passion, the angst, the desire. That's my life, man. And I recognize I sometimes I get myself in trouble with all this because I have trouble saying no to people. And I got a call yesterday, and this is so
the
Latino.
wall behind
Maybe
you
can
testifies to that. Yes,
Yeah.
you got a lot of people in your life.
That's right. That's right.
Maybe you can. It's a Latino thing, Tito. I'm not sure, but
Let's find out.
this woman sent me a text. She says, it's all in Spanish. Father, the mother of a sister of a friend of this cousin of mine died.
Yep.
And they want to have a memorial mass.
Yep.
I live in Gary, Indiana.
Uh-huh. And where is she?
What?
Where are they?
Is this in Oaxaca
In
or
Chicago.
something?
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's in
Okay.
Chicago. It's
Yeah.
south
Okay.
side of Chicago. And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's incredibly Latino. And it's very much all about relationships, especially like familial ones. And there's this notion of familial relationships that I don't think that doesn't always encompass actual family, in the more traditional sense of,
Right.
Like what you were describing there, where it's like, it's the relative of a relative of a friend of a relative kind of a thing. But that's family. And it's such a huge part of, what makes up Latino culture, but of defining relationship and learning how to communicate and learning how to express that is such a huge part. I'm just impressed, you went and you learned Spanish, right? You speak Spanish incredibly well. You sing in Spanish
talk about
incredibly
that.
well. And yeah, I mean,
Gracias.
that's part of relationship. That's a huge part, being able to speak with people and engage them. Tell us about it.
So I was working in my first assignment was up in Minnesota. I served there for 3 years as an associate. Magical time, just great. They taught me how to be a priest. Then I went to the vocation office for a few years, and I met a lot of those guys you were talking about, Casey, who were like, my life is kind of a disaster, and I'm really not good at relationships, so I'm thinking maybe I could become a Franciscan. I'm like,
Yeah.
hell no.
Nope. No, you can't.
We're discerning you as much as you're discerning us.
Yep.
Yeah, it was
This is not a place to
amazing-
hide.
Nope.
Oh my gosh, so many of those kind of relationships. Yeah, I mean, I turned down way more people than we accepted back in those days.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I was working there, and then I went into formation for a couple of years. That was really great experience working. It was weird though, because I was relatively young. Almost all the guys in the formation community at that time were older than I was, and I was their formation director, so it was a little weird. But in the middle of all that, while I was in the vocation office, I decided, I think I might need to learn how to speak Spanish. I mean, in this country, I didn't really have any missionary desires. More like right here in the U.S., So I took one course in Minnesota, of all places. It was a course in Spanish. Yo vivo en Mankato, Minnesota. Yeah. So I mean, I learned how to celebrate. I learned how to read the mass. That's what I could say. I mean, I remember that.
Padre, Hijo, Espíritu Santo. There we go.
Beautiful. Great accent, bro. Anyway.
Gracias.
So I learned how to speak Spanish enough to maybe say the mass. Well, then I didn't do anything with it. I mean, I was doing other work. I was in the formation house, and I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll go to mass every week on a Sunday. No, I'm not going to do that, So it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So 5 years later, it was funny. I got a call from our provincial. He said, Ed, we want you to go to this church over in Joliet. It's called St. John the Baptist. And, we're asking you because we need someone who speaks Spanish. And I'm like, wait,
Why are you
sure
asking me?
you're calling the right guy? Yeah, what the hell? I was like, oh my God. I was so nervous. Oh my God. I was incredibly nervous. And I showed up there. I'll never forget it. It was August of 1997, hot as can be. And I got to this church, and the secretary, who was Anglo, said, hey, Father, there's a quinceañera tomorrow.
Oh, my gosh.
That's how she spoke. And I was like,
Como
what the heck is
estás,
that?
Padre?
Exactly. Oh, God. What is a quinceañera anyway, So I found out, and I didn't know anything about it. And then the next day, Sunday, I'll never forget this. I think it was the feast of the angels. What do you call that? Our Lady of the Angels, 2nd of August. And
August, yeah.
it was a Sunday, and I celebrated the masses, and I preached, and I preached in English, and the deacon translated my homily in Spanish. But I could get by enough. So at the end of Mass, all these people started coming up to me. Ay, Padre, necesitamos ayuda con nuestra hija. And I'm like,
Repite, por favor.
Yep.
Con el diácono. Yeah. Poquito más lentamente, por favor. I mean, I was just lost. And And that day, though, I tell you this, a seed was planted in my heart that said, Ed, if you're going to be here, you need to learn this language. Yeah. So I worked really hard. I didn't go right away. Eventually, I found my way to a program in Guadalajara, and it was a intense, I was only there for 3 weeks of class, but I have a lifelong relationship with my maestra. Hasta la fecha es mi maestra. Rosie, celebré la boda de su hija, and I've just been with her. Every time I go to Guadalajara, I have to call her, and I go to dinner.
It's hard to imagine you keeping in touch with someone. Relationships, years past. Yeah.
So here's what happened. Then, this is the best part. Tito, you'll love this.
Okay.
So I ended up coming back after a month. I spent 3 weeks in class, and then I had an extra week, and I went to Puerto Vallarta and saw some friends. And now I'm just in this Mexican world, and I lived with a family who I'm still in touch with. I just talked to them last week. I baptized their son the next year when I went back for more time to study, and I bought, when I got to Mexico, I bought 2 cassette tapes, because I asked people, like, who are the artistas, the singers? I think maybe I could learn from music, right? I'm a music guy. Yeah. And they said
Shakira wasn't around yet?
No Shakira. They had Vicente Fernandez and Alejandro Fernandez. So I thought, okay. So I bought these tapes, and every day I had a Walkman. And I would walk back and forth to my classes, and just with the earphones, and I'm just, and one song, one phrase of one song got stuck in my ear. So I'm there for a month. I come back, and at the beginning I was just struggling with all to get by, and I learned like this one song called Bailemos con el tuca, bailemos con el naso, bailemos con el tuca, 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 naso. I mean, it's just
classic liturgical song,
right?
Right. And I thought I was doing really well. I learned it on the radio, 107.9. So then I came home from Guadalajara, and I went to the mass, and I could be really dramatic, right? Like in liturgy. So the deacon read the gospel. This is at the 12:30 Spanish mass. I sat down, and I stayed seated for a minute, like kind of an awkward pause. And then I stood up, and I said, No puedo evitarlo y quiero gritarlo, hermoso cariño que Dios me ha mandado no más para mí. Ay, ay, ay.
Oh, they loved you.
Yeah, they did.
It was awesome. Their eyes were like, oh my God. It was amazing. They burst into applause, and I was like, oh. And they said, like, what happened? I mean, we used to have a priest, an Anglo, a Gringo. Now it's Father Vicente Fernandez.
That's right.
Now you're my priest. You're our priest, and that's the one thing I found. My Spanish is awful, and Tito will try to compliment me a little bit, but it's not great. I can't hear very well. I can read it a little bit, but what I've experienced is that despite that, people are incredibly gracious and incredibly thankful, and they're not just being patient and putting up with me. They're genuinely touched that I would try to learn their language and serve them. And it's a huge challenge for me, and I would say it's an act of penance sometimes, but not because I don't love the people, but because I feel stupid, because I feel out of place. But I think it's just like a small dose of what the people I'm serving probably feel a lot, being immigrants, being from other countries, and say like, all right, I can enter your world a little bit, and I think they appreciate that it builds that empathy. Yeah,
I agree. And it's been such a gift to be, I entered in. And it's powerful. I mean, to this day, I'm still friends with some of those people from Joliet. And then I went from there to the back of the yards neighborhood in Chicago, where all the Latino ministry that I was doing in Joliet tripled. Every Saturday I'd have 10 baptisms and a wedding and a quinceañera. Yeah. It was
all the family.
I used to call it El Sábado Gigante.
Right.
It was great. And all those parties.
We love that show.
Do you remember watching that in novitiate?
Oh, yeah.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Sábado Gigante. It's a mix of what, like, for those who have never heard of it, it's like Saturday Night Live with a soap opera with The Price is Right, all in one.
It's just, it was a huge sort of, like a game show and a talk show and all these things mixed together. Yeah. And we started watching it because we had 3 brothers who were Mexican. One of them was like, hey, I watched this show Saturday morning, Sábado Gigante. And then we all just got hooked on it, and it became one of the things that we did.
Just absurd.
Yeah.
I think it's
So
one of the
when I was-
longest running shows. Is it still on?
No, Don Francisco
Oh, okay.
retired.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
and nobody can take his place.
Nah.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
Johnny Carson back in my
Well,
day.
I got to know, and Tito probably doesn't have this experience as much, but us gringos, we've got to commiserate together. Have you made any major mistakes in learning
Oh, my
Spanish? Did you
God.
skid up in the homily? Because there was one friar in our former province. I just love his story where he got sick one time, and he came back to mass, and he said that he wanted to say that he was in bed with the flu all week. And so he was in bed with the monjo all week, but he said monja,
no.
which is the nun. And so the people were a bit confused, but they clapped for him.
Yeah, right.
They
Good
understood
luck
what he was
about
saying.
it. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
He was either sick
tell
or he
ya.
was bragging.
Yes. So have you ever had any of those where you're just like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
what did I just say?
Yep.
Yeah, I've got several. One time,
Do
okay,
tell. I
so
gotta know.
I'm
Please do.
preaching this. There's one where it was Easter and Easter season, and the gospel was the road to Emmaus, and so I'm preaching on the road to Emmaus, and I hear this song by a guy named Jose Alfredo Jimenez that says, "No vale nada la vida." La vida no vale nada. Comienza siempre llorando y así llorando se acaba. Por eso es que en este mundo, todos, la vida no vale nada.
Wow.
It's a great, can you hear the sadness?
Oh, it's a very sad
so
song.
sad. Yeah. So it says, life is not worth living.
Yep.
You start crying and you end crying. Therefore, in this world, life is not worth living.
Yeah.
So I said,
Oh my gosh.
this song describes the experience of the disciples. I mean, there they are. They're on the road to Emmaus. Everything has fallen apart. La vida no vale nada, right? And all of us have had that experience, haven't we? I mean, come on. It's the song that we go to. It's our go-to song sometimes. We sing, nobody knows the trouble I've seen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or the one I love to say, we Franciscans, or we priests and religious love to sing, especially around Valentine's Day, is, I've been cheated, been mistreated, when will I be loved? So I'm preaching this at the Spanish Mass, and I'm saying, all of us have this experience. I remember the first time it happened to me. I was 16 years old. My girlfriend left me. She just left me. And worse, she went with my best friend. Oh my God, it was terrible. And I wanted to say, it was like a knife in my heart.
Oh no.
But what came out was, it was like a spoon in my heart. Because the word for
Sure.
knife is cuchillo, and
Yep.
the word for spoon is cuchara. So I said,
That's right.
Era como una cuchara en mi corazón. And as soon as I said it, I was like, oh my God. And the guy in the
Well, it
front row.
scoops it out.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. The guy in the front row, he goes, cuchillo, padre.
Kind of kills the moment.
The emotional impact is gone.
That's right. But I'll tell you, the classic, I mean, I've told this story 100 times, and it's so true. So I heard a priest years ago giving a retreat, and he said, may God bless you and everyone you love. Beautiful, right? And I think that's so true. And I use it all the time. I say it all the time. May God bless you and everyone you love. Because blessings aren't private. If I'm blessing you, I'm blessing your husband, your wife, your kids, your friends, your family, your enemies, everybody. It's like manure. Blessings are like spread all over the place.
Yep.
So,
All right.
Yep.
It's a good
so
image.
it's good. It's a little
And
graphic,
it reeks.
but
It can't be contained.
That's right.
it reeks. So I learned how to say that in Spanish. Que Dios les bendiga a ustedes y a todos los que aman. And I was saying that for a long time. Then I went to Guadalajara, and the people that I love, I've stayed with, I still stay at their home now. Their boys are in their 20s. The one I baptized, Leo, he's huge. It's just great. He just came to Chicago a month ago, and I got to spend some time with him. It was wonderful. And they were watching some show on TV, and I heard a different word, and I thought, I could say that instead of what I was saying in Spanish. And it was the wrong word, and I should have known because I heard it on a telenovela, right?
Yep.
So the next day. So one day, a Tuesday, I was at church, And I sang like Vicente Fernandez, and I told a joke. I realized I turned the corner. I had written out my homily, and I didn't read a word of it. I just spoke it, and I was really excited. And at the end of Mass, I said, the regular blessing, que Dios les bendiga a ustedes y a todos los que amen. La misa terminado, vayamos en paz, and everybody burst into applause. Hey, look at the gringo, pelon, bald guy. It's great, so great. So I'm happy. The next day, I show up at church, and I got this new word. Well, nobody clapped. They all looked at me like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. And I had no idea what I had said wrong. So at the end of Mass, I said to this, 200 people, I said, may God bless you and all your lovers.
Yep. Well, just out of curiosity, what was the word?
Que Dios les bendiga a ustedes y a todos sus amantes.
Yeah.
All your amantes. and all the men were like, gracias, padre. No.
The father said so.
No, they said, back to Chicago, gringo. You don't speak no Spanish. So.
Well, I'm curious, Tito. So you don't have quite the gringo experience necessarily, but I think you have the experience of encountering Mexicanos and Guatemaltecas and Salvadoreños and different Spanishes, Dominicanos for sure. Mm-hmm. Have you had some, not necessarily faux pas, but you realized what you were saying was not what they were hearing?
No, I'm perfect.
Yeah. Did you meet? Those seminarians that I met years ago? Yeah.
Yes. Those Puerto Rican Spanish is obviously the most pristine and perfect and universal.
Yes, it's perfect. Okay, so let's see. I don't know that I can translate literally what happened because it's always very bad, but I'll give you a sense. So I remember. So I moved from. My parents grew up in Puerto Rico. I was born in Florida. Lived in Germany for a while, and then moved to Arizona. So all the Spanish that I had spoken was like Puerto Rican Spanish. And so I remember just being like, we were on a bus and with some, like we were on a field trip and some of my Mexican friends were on the bus with me and something was about to fall. And I don't remember what it was. I just remember pointing at it to my friend and I go, cógelo. And like he and all the other Mexicans on the bus just like froze and looked at me. And they were like, what did you just say? And I was like, I said, grab it. I said, get it. And they're like, that is not what you said. I'm like, that is what I said.
That's not what you said.
And they're like, that's not what you said.
Mexican,
I'm like,
it's not.
That's what I said. And that's what they said. They said, that doesn't mean that. I'm like, yes, it does. Look it up in the dictionary. And so we're arguing back and forth. And they go, okay, well, in Mexico, that's not what that means. I was like, well, what does it mean in Mexico? And they're like, it means not go get
pick up
it,
in a
but
sense.
Do something
go
bad.
get some.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I remember that word in particular when I was in Mexico learning Spanish. I learned like you don't use this word. Like in most contexts, this is just going to be the bad kind of F word. And then we were taught, someone picks you up from the airport, you would use that word as well. I'm like, nope, I'm not using that word. Nope. My parents are not picking me up from the airport. I'll find another way to say this because this is going to be misinterpreted.
Yep. That's the whole. This is like the learning part took place where I was like, okay, so then what do you use? And they go, we use agarrar, and I'm like, well, that means grab. That doesn't sound much better to me. And they're like, or we can say buscar. I'm like, well, that means find. It's not lost. I know where it is. Go get it. So it became this whole thing. That was one. I also remember, this was in the novitiate. Another brother, Lalo. His birthday was coming up, and I would bake everyone's birthday cakes. It was something that I had just started doing, and I really enjoyed baking cake. Yeah. And so I went to Brother Lalo, and I was like, Lalo, what kind of cake do you want? But, he was from Costa Rica. And so, he and I would usually engage in Spanglish, or I would engage in Spanglish. He would engage in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And so I said, ¿Qué tipo de bizcocho quieres para tu cumpleaños? And I was saying to him, what type of cake do you want for your birthday? In Puerto Rico, we use bizcocho for cake. Some people use torta or postre. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm not really interested in bizcocho. And I was like, what does that mean? And he starts laughing. He goes, in Costa Rica, bizcocho means something else. And I was like, okay, is it anatomical? He goes, yep. And I said, okay, that's all I need to know.
Ah, boy.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I'm not making one of those. I'm not making one of those for your birthday.
Exactly.
No, not that type of birthday.
I made another mistake along the wrong word was there's a word which is cabron, which means like, you know, it's a criticism.
Yeah.
Or like idiots or something.
Yeah, but
yeah,
it
a little stronger.
depends on where you
Yeah.
are, right?
Yeah.
So the cabra is an animal. Anyway, I was in Joliet in my first assignment, and I would do this thing at the beginning of mass. I'd say, "So is anybody here? You know, not my first assignment. It was my first time in Spanish.
Okay.
Is there anybody here for the first or second time?" And where they'd say, "Oh yeah, oh where are you from? I'm from Guanajuato. Oh, donde no vale nada la vida. Welcome." So it'd be a thing.
Yeah.
And this one woman came and she said that she was from Chicago, and the woman next to her said, "Oh, she's your paisana, you know." And
Right.
I wanted to say, "Sí, somos compañeros. We're compañeros."
Yeah, we
Instead,
accompany each
Sí.
other. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I said was, "Sí, somos cabrones."
Yeah.
And the church was like, you know, it's like you could feel that, and I think, "Oh, geez, I did,
Yep.
I said it
Yep.
wrong."
Oops.
Yeah, you went
I
from
will say-
we are countrymen or we are from the same people who accompany each other to we're idiots.
We're
Yep.
idiots. Yeah.
I will say, in my level of Spanish, I can get away with a little bit of pot stirring, where I know what I'm saying, but people don't think I know what I'm saying.
Right.
And so that comes up. Sometimes it's just like silly, you know, it means nothing.
Yeah.
So mixing up camarero and camarone, you know, so
Yeah,
the
right.
difference between a shrimp and a waiter, you know, and I'll be silly and mix these up. But I did learn from someone else's mistake, and I was very bold one time and played dumb, which was I said, estoy excitado. So I'm excited is
Right.
what it sounds
Yeah,
like.
right.
But it's
Not
really,
a good idea.
it's an adult version of excited. So
Yeah.
Right.
I was in Spanish class with my two classmates and a nun. And the
Oh,
nun
no.
asked me how I felt about my weekend. And so I looked at my classmates and played dumb and said, "Oh, estoy muy excitado." And the nun nearly melted. She's like, "Oh, no. In Spanish, we don't say that." I was like, "Oh, sister, what did I say? I'm so sorry." And my classmates were just like,
Yeah.
"I can't believe you said that."
Yeah.
I got one more.
All right.
Okay.
When I was new, before you, I mean, like I was still trying to learn. I used to say, "No tengo miedo, porque yo sé que hablo mal, pero no tengo miedo, porque comunicarse es más importante que hablar perfectamente." So I was saying that, you know, I don't have any fear. I'm not afraid to make a mistake. A lot of people are afraid to make mistakes. I'm not. I make a lot of mistakes, and I laugh at my mistakes. One of the lessons of my life, a good one, I just learn how to make mistakes. So one time I was repeating that phrase, only I said the wrong word again.
For
And
miedo?
I was talking to this sweet little old lady. Yeah, instead of miedo, I
Oh,
said,
no.
"Oh, pues no tengo
Mierda.
mierda."
Oh, no.
And as soon as I said it, I was like, "Oh my God," you know, and that means poop, you know, I don't have any, or the other word, I don't have any poop. And this sweet little old lady, she's like, "Sí, padre." Sí.
I knew
And
a
I think
friar.
it points
little-
to what we've been talking about the
Yeah.
whole time, which is relationship, which
Yeah.
you can get away with these things and people are patient
Yeah.
with you because you're entering into their world, because you have a
Yeah.
whole wall of pictures on your behind you, because
Yeah.
we give each other a little bit of slack sometimes when you get to know someone. If you just came
Thanks
in
be to
and you were
God.
kind of
Yeah.
you know, arrogant, or you're just kind of above it, and then you left, people are like, "Who the heck's that guy?" But now we can laugh at these things, and we can say, "Oh, do you remember that time Father Ed did this stupid thing?" Like, "Oh,
Yep.
it was so funny," and you know, you grow together. I think it's a wonderful part of our lives as Franciscans.
Yep.
I agree, but let's talk about the other part though. That is, it's sometimes it's a blessing and a curse. I think
Okay.
you know, this is my life. I love people and I love relationships, and I've been in the Chicago area for a lot of years, so I'm really connected, and sometimes I run into struggles, especially with the friars, because you know, I'll get a call from somebody in Joliet asking me to do their wedding, and I'm like, I'm available, you know, sure, I'd like to do that. And then the pastor's like, no, we don't want other priests coming in here, But they don't. But they let other priests go there. It's kind of like, we don't want Ed Shea coming here or something. I don't know. I get a little. I've run into that struggle. And not only with friars, even with other clergy, but it's with the priests. And this good friend of mine, a friar, told me that years ago. He said, yeah, that's what happened to him too. That you're going to get along with people. People are going to absolutely love you, but you're probably going to have some trouble with the other clergy, So that's been one thing.
Yeah, I experienced this, and I've heard other friars experience this as well. And I think it's because your brothers are a very different relationship from the people. And when you go to the people, you're going to get almost, I'm not saying completely, but you're going to get almost entirely critical acclaim, right? People are going to love that you're spending time with them, and they want to have Father over to the house. And I think that's really wonderful. But it's easy in some ways. And I'm not saying our lives are easy, but it's easy to go to other people's house once a month and have dinner. It's difficult. It really is to have dinner with the same people every night that have different ecclesiologies and are your equals and have the ability to criticize you.
Right.
Man, that's a lot of work. And I know sometimes I find myself saying, I'm not going to deal with these guys. I'm going to go to the people that really like me. And that can be sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes is, we got to work through some of this stuff, as frustrating as it is.
I struggle with that, the truth to tell. I mean, I was talking to my spiritual director one time, that same guy, and I told him, I said, I got to talk about another conflict. And I'm always a little surprised when I find out somebody doesn't like me. I mean, come on, what's not to like, right? I'm a positive person. I went to Notre Dame, I see the glass half full. And I said, I'm always kind of surprised. And he said, Ed, he said, I've known you for a really long time. You should stop being surprised.
You need those voices.
It's a good spiritual director.
Yeah.
And another friend of mine said once to me, Eddie, listen, it's an altar, not a stage.
Oh.
So I could get that. And I get it. And I another image that comes to me is when I drive, I never experience road rage. I drive a lot and I never
God
get
bless
mad.
you.
Yeah, I get mad.
But I cause it. By the way. I
Okay.
and I think,
right.
and honestly,
Yeah.
I think that's a part of my personality.
Okay.
I have to learn. My spiritual director is right. I have to learn that sometimes people are not gonna like that, and you have to deal with it. He said, I don't mean you have to change. He used himself as an example. He said, I'm a pretty mild-mannered guy, Ed. You know me. When I walk into a room, nobody notices. Nobody pays attention. That's not true for you, and I get that. And sometimes friars can be kind of cruel, I've heard said about me and even to my face. The guy said, Ed, you suck all the air out of a room.
Wow.
I'm like, wow. I mean, that's a really cruel thing to say. I told him, I said, that's a really cruel thing. And he goes, yeah, and you deserve it.
Wow.
So
I think that the brothers talk about those relationships. I mean, not all the relationships are affirming. I've often heard that the brothers are going to be the floor that never let you get too low. We're never going to be alone. But they can also be that ceiling. They're going to knock you down and not let you get too full of yourself. Yep. And I think, honestly, that's why I need the brothers so much in my life. I could have joined other religious orders. They're a little more independent. And I could have done my thing and been a little more ambitious. But I'm so thankful for the brothers in all of their mess and my mess. There's no perfect brother, because I've found, and Tito, maybe you can attest to this as well, the most important experiences I've had as a friar are the ones that have started with arguments or started with frustrations. Not all of them have been resolved, but some of them have, and they're the meaningful ones I think of a friar confronting me and telling me something I needed to hear who wasn't a fan of me, or a friar challenging me to see the world in a different way. And I think you get to pick your friends, but you don't get to pick your brothers. And there's something unsettling but so important about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that.
Well, for what it's worth, as an old guy, I'm still learning that lesson. It's a lesson imperfectly learned. And I mean, I'm here now. We have a new community here in Gary. It's kind of an exciting new beginning, and it's very much unsettled still. I got to say, to tell the truth. I mean, I'm loving this new stuff that we're getting from Atlanta, from our province, about working on the synodal relationships and developing it. But there's a lot of resistance, and I'm not getting into that stuff. I don't want to do that.
Yep.
So I'm the vicar of this. We're a filial house, and so I'm the vicar of this house. So there's 4 of us now, 5 with another friar just came, and for example, we had a plan to meet this coming week, and it's Holy Week. I mean, why do we plan to meet in Holy Week? So we're going to change that plan. We have to adapt, and it's good. We're good at adapting. And there's a great saying I learned in AA that says you can never control the wind, but you can always adjust your sails. That's true. And I'm still working on that. And I think I'm really so enlivened by this conversation around Hispanic ministry and the future of our province. And we just talked recently about what are some places you think we should definitely stay. What are some places you think maybe we could give up? And I've got a little bit of Hispanic ministry here in Gary. There's one. Our biggest mass is the one in Spanish, and it was packed to the roof yesterday. Just beautiful for Palm Sunday. But who knows? It's just the one mass, and I think it's my role here in this ministry to develop the lay leadership of that church, and so that's what I see myself doing. And sometimes I run into conflict with some of the other things that are going on, but it's a life lesson. So I was a pastor for 15 years in 3 different places, and now I haven't been a pastor for a long time, and I don't think I want to be. I don't mind. One of the friars described it to me once. He said, "Yeah, let that guy take care of the barn. You just take care of the sheep."
Yeah.
And I get to. That's what I get to do. And so I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Well, brother. Sometimes relationships are a joy, sometimes they're a struggle, but I think taken all together, our lives are enriched by them, and I think it's something you testify to. Yep. We are enriched by your life. We've never lived together, but I'm inspired by the work you do, and thank you so much for joining us here. I think you're probably really well known in your province, but a lot of our guys don't know you, and that's a shame. And so I hope that as we expand here, as we become together, that we can get to know each other and see the wonderful gifts that you offer. So thank you so much.
That's great. I hope you don't listen to all the things that the guys from my legacy province tell you.
We got to listen to it all, but we don't have to necessarily respond to it all.
That's right.
Buy into it all. Hey, thank you guys. I mean, this is just a wonderful thing. I'm honored to be asked to be a part of this.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us and sharing your story and your experiences. I think Casey knew you a little bit better than I did, so this has been really cool to get to know you and to chat with you. So thank you for that.
Gracias, Tito. Gracias.
Sí, de nada.
De nada. Hasta luego. Tito, what a guy.
Casey.
So I can't even remember. Have you met him in person before?
Yeah. There were a couple times we would go to when he was still living in the Loop. We would go to the Loop and stuff like that. We did converse, but never really in depth like this. This is great.
Sure. Paths crossed. Yeah, I mean, I just love hearing people's stories, and particularly when stories like that where, someone who doesn't speak Spanish decides, gosh, I got to learn this, and there's new people out there.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so those big life changes.
Absolutely.
I always love hearing that in the friars.
Yeah, me too. The willingness to go out and to kind of make yourself little again. Say, all right, I'm going to start from scratch, learn something brand new. I think that's intrinsic to who we are. We should always be willing to start anew like that.
I think what he touched on is really important of the struggle of our lives sometimes. Yeah, I think the brothers in the catalog always look so nice and loving together, but that's not always what family is. Family is supportive, and family is so inspiring at times. But family is work, and the brothers are work.
Yeah, family can be messy sometimes.
Yeah. Well, Tito, it's been wonderful having this conversation once again. This is episode 7, I think. Man, we're just keeping going along. We're moving. We may have to take a break after this one. We're on Holy Week right now, but for all the people listening at home, we're not taking a permanent break. Just we need a week off because we got people who are busy. We got some good ones lined up. I think we have a schedule for the next month already lined up. People are excited to be here. I cannot wait to show you some of these friars.
Yeah, same.
Peace, everyone at home. Have a wonderful Easter. You'll be hearing this during the Easter season already, so enjoy your 50 days. God bless.